because the more that you nurture the person and you start to convert them, now hopefully you've done a good job, right, in telling your story. Then the power of the story, then you have created a customer for life. So when you're hitting a lull, those are the people you send your email blast to give you a nice little lift.
You're listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. My guest today is Tyzer Evans of the Grind, Sell, Elevate podcast. Tyzer has a long, very successful career in sales, and he'll tell you some of the details during the podcast. But what this episode is, you could look at this as a masterclass on selling, sales principles, sales processes. And between the two of us, we kind of sliced and diced those processes to talk about his career and the successes that he's had and how to apply that to your e-commerce store. Enjoy the show. Hey, I'm here with Tyzer Evans, and he's the host of the podcast Grind, Sell, Elevate. Phenomenal podcast, and you should give it a listen. One of Tyzer's strengths is talking about sales and teaching sales, which he has done successfully for quite some time. Among other things, the guy's like a Renaissance man, so you got to listen. So welcome, Tyzer.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. Yeah, I do feel like that sometimes. I dabble my hand into a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's focus on sales. Listeners are in e-commerce, so we're not necessarily talking about making a phone call and making a sale like you might in some other situations, but selling is selling. So let's talk about ideas, principles of selling, and later on we'll get into how to apply that to e-com.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, always, the basic fundamentals is really just how do you communicate well, right? I mean, people, that's the old adage that people love to buy but hate to be sold.
Yes.
So the first thing I'm always trying to do when I'm interacting or thinking about, even online businesses of how to engage with somebody is how do you get their guard down?
Yeah.
How are you able to convey your message? So I talk a lot about people about how to disarm people, and you could talk about NLP and some of the things that are out there. For me, I'm always big on asking permission and whatnot. So that's a good place to start. Obviously, I try to always think about, why would someone want to do business with me? Why would someone want to do business with my company? What am I trying to fulfill for them? I think a lot of the times when people think of sales, and I've seen this over and over and over, is that they jump right into who they are, what their company does, and how awesome their benefits and features and whatnot, and people just don't really care.
No, they don't.
Right?
No.
So, so I always try to, people say, start, with getting someone to lower their guard, and then you just start to exclusively talk about them.
Yes.
Right. And talk about how you've uncovered needs that maybe they don't know about, or problems you've solved for other clients that might be able to relate to them.
That is an excellent starting point for this conversation and for people thinking about how to sell more from a store. So how do we learn about other people? Obviously, I think when you start a store, when you're running a store, you have an idea about who you're selling to. But how do you get into the nitty gritty of, what do I say? I know how to say it. Like I know how to talk to somebody and how to build rapport maybe. But how do you decide what more to say?
Just ask questions. So, and that's always where I come from, is ask questions, and I think and you're more the expert on the stores, e-commerce, that's your GM. So you could help me here. But, I always think is I just look at what the competition's doing. Like, what are they doing well? Then what can I replicate? And then just put my own variation or my own spin. So even when it comes to sales, it's just not, I tell people, I don't know that I have any new profound wisdom. I've just taken a little bit from everybody and then just kind of molded it to my own flavor. and that's, it's pretty basic. I just learned early on it was really my second, my first corporate gig. I worked in the surf industry in college and I won some sales awards, but it wasn't tough to sell surfboards
Yeah.
and board shorts to moms, that were coming in buying
Right.
for their kids.
Yeah.
But when I got to enterprise rent a car, after I graduated college, I thought that it would be, like, I'd naturally be good at it, and I wasn't.
Mm.
And so it took a lot of role playing. I went and I proactively reached out to the top three salespeople. I shadowed them. I had them with customers, and then I
Yeah.
had them role play with me. And I basically just copied their dialogue and then just infused my own variations of it.
Cool. That's cool. And to back up for a second, so yes, I know selling in the e-commerce space, but one of the huge um, turbo boosters on my career has been studying other people's industries. So, talking to somebody who knows, how to sell in rental cars or any other space, that should inform how we do business online, because, humans are humans. So human
Mhm.
psychology is going to be the same. So with that in mind, let's say you are selling a rental car. I walk into Enterprise, or I call because they'll pick you up. I don't know if they still do that, but let's say I call, I want to rent a car. How do you have that conversation? Like, I have a need. It shouldn't
Mhm.
it shouldn't be that hard, right? What do you want to upsell me to, like, the luxury, or what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. So again, this was quite some time ago, Amy. But
Yeah.
so I'll try to throw on my old enterprise hat. But yeah, so we'd go pick them up, right? And then their role structure was like, hey, we want you to sell. Really, it was kind of three things. We want you to sell them the extra protection, so the damage waiver, because they're a self-insured entity. So if you get the damage waiver, you drive the car, you don't wreck it, it's pure profit for them.
Yeah.
And then secondly, to upgrade into a better vehicle, and then to sell the prepaid gas.
Cool.
So those are the three things. And then we were kind of taught to take, or at least the people that mentored me, 3 no's on each of those items. So within a certain type of transaction, you would walk away with 9 no's potentially.
That's awesome.
So those, when you'd go pick someone up, that was advantage, right? So that's kind of the rapport building would start in the car, talking to the person. Not everybody was getting super friendly, and then other people, you didn't have that advantage of picking them up. They would get dropped off by a body shop, or they would just simply walk in off the street.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to build rapport, be able to provide value, and to sell all within about a 7-8 minute span.
Wow. Yeah.
And you got a lot of practice, because I would usually, they call tickets or ups, right? I'd usually get like 10 to 20 ups a day, or opportunities or tickets.
Wow.
So you had a lot of like kind of turn and burn type mentality.
Yeah.
But normally what I do is I just walk you out to the lot and I'd say, hey, Amy, I see you've got the Chevy Aveo. It's really, let's be honest, it's tin can on wheels,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but it'll get you from A to B,
Right.
but I did notice that you're going on a longer drive up to Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be in the car for a couple of hours. I know road safety is probably important to you. I don't know if you knew this or not when they told you when they picked you up in the shuttle van, but today we're doing a manager special, 50% off of any car on the lot. So if you could look out any car on the slot, I know you'd love to drive the Chevy, Aveo, but if you could choose another car, what would it be?
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's like, you're leading them into the dream. You're like, oh, I could drive this, whatever other, I can't even think of another car right now, off the lot. It's a nice color. I'm only going to be in the car like, a few hours, so I might as well have some fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, there's a whole lot there that you just said. And for ecom, we can translate that over into, how we sell online. So you have 7 or 8 minutes on a walk-in, or you're in a forced situation with them in the car when you go pick them up, which could be 10 minutes or 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And, think about how to say what you want to say. Now, you had practice, but, we have all those opportunities with ecom. We've got email sequences. We've got abandoned cart, abandoned browse flows. We've got what we say on the collection page or the product page, or like we have multiple touches just on one cold sale, to sell something. And then once someone's a customer, I mean, did Enterprise have, just to keep using that example, I know it's old for you, but did they have a loyalty program? Like you, when you become brand loyal, you get, I don't know, popcorn, something.
No, they didn't, but they did when I was there, acquire Alamo and National, and they had like a business type, frequent flyer type thing.
Cool.
There were just different avenues. So they did, go out and strategically buy a couple of companies that did those type of promotions.
That is so cool. That is so cool. The multiple touches, that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, that's just sales in general. Like what I do today is I set up cadences and sequences, and so it is very comparable, right? You're going to do this maybe through like your abandoned cart or email sequence while they're on the site, and so I do the same thing. It's just like I'll normally call email, right? So they see their phone, they see a voice message, and then they get a ping from me from an email. And then if they don't respond, then usually I'll follow up 3 days later and say, hey, did you get a chance? Very simple, quick. Did you get a chance to read my email? Period.
Yep.
And then if it's nothing, I'll wait a week. Then I'll go request them on LinkedIn and send them a nice little note. Hey, I know I've reached out to you a few times. I know you're busy. That's why I'm trying to talk to you. So, hopefully you accept my LinkedIn request, some type of message. Yes. And then I usually add like a podcast that's relevant to our field or something. Yep. Leave them alone. Call them the next week if I don't hear back. The same thing. It's just kind of little touches, and eventually you just you show them you're consistent, you wear them down, and they come around.
Yes, yeah. I want listeners to identify that what Tyzer just gave us was a sequence, a flow that you can put in place no matter what you're selling. No matter what you're selling. So Tyzer, you're doing it by email and phone, but somebody on a store, SMS, email, find ways to bring them back to the store, sell in the store, video, social, all kinds of ways. So that's awesome. So what are some of the other principles of sales that have been useful to you? Because you had a very successful selling career.
Yeah, well, I like to think so, but that's subjective. I think that if you look at the fundamentals is just having confidence is, first and foremost. If you don't believe and you can't, I guess the best place to say this is all selling is to me is a transfer of energy.
Yes.
And so that's why confidence is so important, because you're just transferring that energy over to them, that you have conviction in your company and your product, and you truly can solve your problem.
Yep.
Right. Consistency, like we were just talking about, with your messaging and your follow-up is everything. Most salespeople and organizations only follow up 3 times.
All you have to do is 4, 5, and 6, and you're top dog, right?
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. So I tell people, I'm like, the average salesperson follows up 3 times, but statistically, it takes 7 to 12 touches to reach your prospect the first time, and then another 5 to 8 touches to sell them.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot more contact than most people feel like they should be doing. And yet, I mean, it's a noisy world. So you're competing with every other life situation to try to get in there to sell them something is going to be beneficial to them.
And that's it. And that's why I think a lot of salespeople, they get call reluctancy, or even in their email sequencing, right? They're like, well, I don't want to pester them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, no, it's your job. And if you truly believe in what you are selling or what you are offering,
right,
then it is your job to go pester that person, because they need what you have. And if you don't believe that, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Right. Exactly. Walmart's hiring. McDonald's is hiring.
Exactly.
Actually, I read the paper. Walmart might not be hiring today. So they're
no. Are they
market downturn. July 27, 2022. So if you're listening at some other time, and now I've got a weed whacker outside my window, so we're getting all kinds of interesting stuff going on. I hope it doesn't show up on the sound. So, yeah, multiple touches, following up. So the equivalent to that with the store, taking your principle of, I'm just going to be disciplined and regularly stay in touch with people until step one, I get the appointment. Step one for you is not making the sale.
Mm-mm.
No, that comes later.
Yeah, way later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that that's clear. You got to have a clear understanding of your buying cycle, kind of understanding your avatar of how they make decisions, how many people are typically involved in making the decisions. Is what I do now is more what we would call channel selling, right?
Mhm.
So I reach out to insurance brokers across the country and I work with them to help secure employee benefits for their customers. So, I'm selling to a CFO or a controller of organizations, but I have to do it through the insurance broker in a
Yes.
lot of instances. Sometimes they put me in front of them. Oftentimes they do. But it's a different type of way to how do you influence and then within the insurance office, there could be, account managers and people that have influence on the decision or what the insurance agent will go talk to the business owner or the CFO.
Yeah.
Then, HR has influence. So you're dealing with a lot of different personalities. So you want to get a good handle on who's doing what and ask a lot of great questions.
I don't want your job. I like my job.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
hard.
It's,
well,
and you're dealing with it. And what we do is a lot of the items I'm selling are multi-million-dollar deals. So there's a lot of consideration and it's a 6 to 9 to 12 month process for that decision. That doesn't even involve the courtship it took me to get for them to trust me to give me the piece of business in the first place.
yes. Or even the first phone call.
Yeah.
That's a level of trust right there. Like, okay, this guy's showing up. Let's see what he's got. And maybe they give you 2 distracted minutes, but then you have to get in from there, right?
Yeah. I've gotten that. I've got 3 minutes before I walk into a meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And they're
Mhm.
not paying attention to you. So you have to drop a knowledge bomb, or some kind of value really fast. But I'm thinking it's not too different scale, different product, different selling the window of the opportunity. That may be different in the store, but the salient points are the same. You have to, the first element of the process is consistently getting in front of people.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. And then, so the next part is getting their attention so that in some form they're raising their hand, right? They're saying, okay, you're allowed to talk to me. You have 3 minutes, go, and that's not unlike selling a shirt or a bracelet or a sign, like a home decor kind of thing. And then what do you do in that, 5 seconds, 2 minutes, to keep that going? I mean, like, how do you hold on to them at that point?
Me ask great questions.
Good.
Right. Because
you're making it about them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Oh,
We're all egocentric by nature. And so the more that you can appeal to someone's ego, then the easier it is for them to make it feel like you have a connection. There may be no connection. You're just asking great questions. So I have what I call power questions.
Yes.
I typically write out 10 to 15 power questions and I just drop one of them. It's like if I'm talking, if you're an insurance broker, I would ask like, Amy, how do you separate yourself from the competition? And I know I'm going to usually get 2 responses. One, they're going to tell me you have great customer service. And then the second one is going to tell me that you're utilizing some type of technology, right? I've heard this 1,000 times.
Yes.
And so this gives me an opportunity to kind of lead in and go, I really appreciate that, Amy. I hope that you have great customer service, but I'm going to be honest with you. I talk to a lot of people every day all around the country, and that's a very common response.
Yes.
And most people say they have great customer service, and a lot of people are using different types of technology when it comes to bin admin systems. What we've been able to do is really give you a clear differentiator. 60% of the business we brought in last year was actually new business for our consultant partners.
Yeah.
And here's how they're winning more business out there.
Yes.
And then I start talking to them about how they are able to better retain business on the back end as well to help stabilize their revenue internally as an agency.
Oh man, what you just said, that is awesome. That is great, because there always has to be your business, every business, e-commerce business, there has to be an acquisition layer of the activities that you're doing, but serving the back end, making additional sales, extending the lifetime value of a customer. Holy cow. So in your world where it's multi-million dollar, deals and businesses and contracts, if you're just focused on cold sales, forget it. You're going to die,
Yeah.
but that relationship, that's gold right from the very first conversation. That is so,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think that it does apply to e-commerce really well, because the more that you nurture the person
yes,
and you start to convert them, now you've done a good job, right, in telling your story.
yes,
Then the power of the story, then you have created a customer for life.
yes,
And then
absolutely.
so when you're hitting a lull, those are the people you send your email blast to
That's
give you a
right.
nice little lift.
Yep. Yep. And email blasts. All right. So audience segmenting, in your lead file, I don't know, whatever you use, it'll be different from what somebody in ecom would use, but you're able to differentiate. Okay, these people actually answered my phone call once. These people have never answered my phone call yet, but I know this, and this about them. So I'm going to try them again. So you might have an A list, and you might have a B list, and you might have a C list of people that, you want to keep trying to sell to. So with that in mind, you're creating different messages, right? A list, B list, C list, and treating them in different ways, just like we would in a store. Like I'm going to talk to somebody differently if they've purchased from me before, or if they're a multi-visitor to the store, and we have ways of finding that out. Or if they've never been to the store, never heard of us before, that we're aware of, we're going to say something different to them. I'm really, the process that you're describing and how you do things. It's mind-boggling to me that, it's so applicable. Sales is sales.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
And you don't have to be a handshake away from a person, and you don't have to, have them in your town, but you do have to develop rapport. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the best way for me to always do that as one, obviously, right, asking great questions. But if you can't do that, obviously, on an e-com store, but I think that that's the and what we talked about when you were on my podcast was, the power of your story, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and having them really understand like what you're about, really, what your mission is, how they can be a part of your mission, how they can be a part of your story.
Yes.
And then you have that real sense of community and bought in. And that's that's what all the great companies do, right? In the world.
Story, buy-in,
Yeah.
Community, us and them.
Yeah.
Coke
Yeah,
versus Pepsi.
It's never about their product, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also not really about price either.
Right.
It's about the story and the community and the service and the feeling and the status that you can help. Maybe price has something to do with it some of the time, but it certainly isn't the first thing that people are looking at, whether it's a multi-million-dollar contract or, a $80 shirt.
Yeah.
Everything in between. So what other selling, are there other tricks? Are there other processes, other things that you do that we haven't touched on?
I said that's a lot of the fundamentals is setting up the right types of cadences, sequences, and then making sure you're staying in front of people. Some of the things that I do, they're just different. There are little nuances like how to leave a voicemail. Like your typical person will say, hey, blah blah blah. They spew their stuff, and give me a call back and here's my number. I never tell someone to call me back because it's not their responsibility, it's mine.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I always tell them, hey, I will call you back in 2 weeks on Thursday at 3 o'clock. Or you can call me back before then if you have time, and here's my phone number. So I'm setting the expectation that, left you a little bit of value.
Yes.
I'm letting you know I'm not going away.
Yes.
I'm letting you know here's when I'm going to call you again. And then when you follow through with that, it starts to build trust and consistency.
Yes.
Again, and that kind of speaks to your rapport. So that's just like one little, trick that I've always done that's worked really well, setting the correct type of expectation.
Yeah, huge expectation. Like, I am here to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I will call you. You don't even have to go to the effort to pick up your phone. I will call you at this time. And then it probably blows them away when you do call them at 3 o'clock on Thursday.
Yes. Yes. That's people always, if you look historically at some of the jobs I've had, heavy lifting on the phones were 80, 100 calls a day.
Yeah.
And in all of my, I've
done that. It's terrible.
It's not fun. You just become numb to it. But it was it was like 2 jobs ago. I started off, and it was like a big office, kind of like, I wouldn't say like a boiler room, but kind of felt like it.
Yeah.
And they were all just making 80 to 100 calls. And I was doing 40, 45 calls a day.
Yeah. And
as a rookie, I was number 6 in the country. And I was pacing for Rookie of the Year, and it was driving everybody nuts. And I was like, well, I'm consistent with my messaging. And then when I get them on the phone, I'm not doing just my whole way I'm going about my process is a bit different. So I didn't have to work quite as hard, but a lot of it, they were calling, leaving the same message, sending the same emails, right? Sporadic when they were going to call somebody back, people constantly would fall off of their radar because they weren't setting the right expectation for themselves and for the person.
Yes.
So that's just, the things that I've always done very clear. When I set up a sequence, probably like you do on ecom, I look at a quarter at a time.
Yes.
And out of 12 weeks, I'll have 8 touches.
Right.
And then that's just kind of how I did my sequences like that.
Right. And more, we have to do that in ecom too, because what's happening in the email world is, and maybe you're seeing this with your emails too, if you go so far outside that email's going to spam, or it may not even get delivered at all. Deliverability has become a huge issue across the board with emails of all kinds. So keeping that, I was just talking to a client about this the other day: recency, frequency, and monetary. These are the 3, kind of areas that we talk about with prospect list, customer list specifically. But so when was the last time they purchased or you had contact with them? And frequency with the customer, like when was the last time they bought something? And how many times have they purchased? So recency and frequency, and then monetary is how much did they spend? So your highest value repeat customer is going to be one who bought in the last 12 weeks, purchased more than once, and just basically mailed you their wallet. I mean, that's going to be like the best customer. And then you segment from there. So with you, it's people who, in that 12-week period, you've had some touches with them, whether it's just voicemail or a first meeting. You're always selling the next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really important to as well, to establish, letting them know what the next step is. I've seen that time and time again where people will have a good conversation or someone will respond to an email and then it doesn't go anywhere because they're not leading them down the path. And that's just not having your sales process completely broke out and segmented.
Yes.
And you understanding where you're at in the process and in the journey with the customer.
Yes. Awesome. So cool. All right. So we've been here about a half an hour, and I want to keep this a consumable length. I'm really, really glad to have had this conversation with you, Tyzer. This is just so cool and a lot of fun. And, I have a love-hate thing with sales. I mean, it's just, I've been in sales off and on most of my career in some form, and it's always been really good to me. And it's always been the hardest thing I do. So just thank you for being here. Tell us how people can get a hold of you, podcast, website, anything.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, my website's just my name, tyzerevans.com. And then the podcast is Grind Sell Elevate. It's on all channels, just a business, interview great people like Amy that are the best at what they do in their specific niches and fields. So I have some really great, interesting conversations with people from all over the world. And then you can find me pretty much on all social media at my name, at Tyzer Evans.
Nice. Excellent. Well, Tyzer, thank you so much. It's really been great talking with you. I'm
Likewise.
trying to find my off button here. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. Get more at amybiddle.me. And until next time, go sell more stuff.